Welcome. I've got a question for you. As you sit here now, what is reality for you? How do you perceive your world? If you look to the right here, I have a jug, I have a glass, and I have a £20 note. If you come and see me later, you can check on this. It shouldn't be that I can take a normal note, place some water inside the glass, and then from there comes a goldfish. It shouldn't be so that you can do these sort of things. What is reality? As we sit here tonight, what I'd like us to do is to think about how we see our everyday existence, how we see that. I was using a 20, so why don't we just use that again as an illustration? You see there's no rabbits at my arms, and my fingers will never leave my hands. But if I take this 20 and fold it, what did you see? Did you see a 20? That's not what I saw. You see, I didn't see a 20. I saw £100. The one that claps the loudest normally gets the money later on. It's a funny thing, really, reality. Often I go round and I illustrate many different things all over using these sort of demonstrations to try and get people to think outside the box. I'd like to just share a little bit about my life with you. When I was younger, from 17 onwards till 23, I joined the Royal Marine Commandos. And I served with the Royal Marines in northern Norway in the Arctic Circle. I served abroad in Northern Ireland, and I did many things with them. I got out the Marines, I got into the ski industry, did 7 winters as a professional skier. All along, I felt like I was searching for something. I was searching for meaning. I was searching for security. And I think I was searching for self-worth. And I was going to all the wrong places. I lived this sort of ski lifestyle of parties and drink and skiing. And then as a hobby, I was a professional, what they would call a magician, doing cabaret and close-up tricks. I was invited to come to London. I went professional, and I worked for Arsenal Football Club for 17 years. I was one of their main entertainers in the corporate hospitality. And then I was invited to do work for United Artists and Warner Brothers. And then I ended up working for McLaren F1, doing a season with them, interviewing the drivers and helping in the Paddock Club through Bernie Ecclestone. And all the time I was doing these things, I kept seeing all these different people who I thought should be happy. And yet when I got to know them, there was something missing. What is reality? Well, a little bit later, I got a job or invited to work for a manager who was managing all the home and away neighbour stores in London. And I went to a party, I was working at this party, and she asked me if I wanted to go under contract with her. And very quickly I moved in with one of the stars who was on home and away, and we were in pantomime together. He was earning £10,000 a week in the 90s, and I was on about £300 a week, and I aspired to be like him. I wanted the fame. Wherever he went, girls wanted his number. Wherever he went, everyone was queuing up to talk to him, and he could buy whatever he wanted. Anyway, when I lived with him, it's funny how on the outside we had one life, but on the inside, it was completely different. He used to come home crying. He said, I have no meaning. I don't know who I am. And I said, but you are so-and-so of this program. Everybody loves you. I said, you're ruining it for me. You have everything I want. I want to be famous. I want to have money. I want the girls chasing after me. And he used to lie there crying in my arms. And at that point, I asked myself, is this the meaning of life? I wonder if you've ever asked yourself that question. Is this the meaning of life? Is this all there is to life? On the outside, I looked like a regular guy. I looked healthy. I looked happy. I seemed to be successful. But on the inside, things weren't right. On the inside, I sensed that I felt really, really heavy. And I don't know if you've ever felt like that. And confused. And you don't know how to fix it. It's really difficult. I realized that there's a heaviness that we can hide. And it's like we carry a suitcase of troubles, isn't it? We carry a suitcase of troubles, and inside we're burdened by something that shouldn't be there, that surprises people. For me, I was chasing the ace. I was chasing money. I bet here we all know someone who on the outside it seems great. On the outside, to others, we should aspire to be like them. But when we get talking to them, we realize there's something missing. We all know those kind of people. I was that person. I realized I needed to change, but I didn't know how to. I realized that I needed to take a step in a different direction. So what did I do? Well, I was traveling around the country, working on golf days and stuff, and I used to pass all these churches. And I thought, maybe they can help me. So I was like this vicar's dream, I call it. You know, this regular guy who knocks on this church in his Mercedes car. And I knocked on the church door, and I said, mate, have you got any courses on God? Because I want to do the beginner one. Because in the army, in Marines, you do beginner, intermediate, advanced. So I said, I want to do the beginner course. He said, well, we've got a course just for you called the Alpha course. I said, great, put my name down. I want to go on the course. When I went on that course, the first thing I realized was how forgiving people were. And then I realized that I needed forgiveness. And I needed to extend that forgiveness to others. And then they talked to me about this concept that God created the world to have a loving relationship with the world. And out of this loving relationship, he gives us free will. He lets us have free will to do what we like. We can either love him or reject him, because love never forces itself on anybody else. I needed my heart fixed. I don't know about you, but my heart was a little bit like this. My heart was a little bit like this. It was fragile. And from my youth, I had tears in it where it had been damaged. And scars, like my parents separating as a young boy. I had disappointments in relationships. I had habits and hang-ups and hurts that I carried deep within. And when I meet people like that, they think the doctor can fix it. The doctor can help. But the doctor didn't make the human heart. On this course, I realized that the one that created the human heart is the one that can fix the human heart. I realized that I'd hurt myself more than anyone else. I'd hurt others, often deliberately. And I found out, hurt God. I'd heard that God wanted to forgive me. But I felt I couldn't be forgiven. I thought I had to be good. And they told me it's not about being good. It's about taking a gift. And bit by bit, through the course, my heart started getting healed. There were scars on it, but that was my story. I want to tell you about a man that was driving in a car with his son. He was driving in the car on the motorway on the M4. The window was open. And as he went through, his son was this young lad of 12 who, if he was stung by a bee, would definitely die because the poison from the bee was, for him, something that would kill him immediately. Anyway, as they were driving around the car with the music up, this bee came in. And the son said to the father, Dad, there's a bee in the car. And he was swatting around, and the dad was swatting for the bee, and the car was going all over the road, and the son was worried that he would die, and the father was worried that his son would die. And then suddenly, the father carried on driving again. And the boy said, Dad, don't you love me? You've stopped swatting and looking for the bee. And the father said, No, I haven't. And he opened his hand, and the bee fell out, dead. He says, I've taken the sting for you. I took it for you so you wouldn't die, so you'd be safe. I'll be okay. I learned on the course that God's a bit like that. He said, I'll take the sting away from the things that hurt so you will be okay with me. Now, I'm just thinking about friendship. Because the other thing they talk to me about, as well as forgiveness, is God wants to be your friend and my friend. And that was a concept I'd never thought about. Why would God want to bother with someone like me? But they explained to me that if God creates us, he wants to have this loving relationship with us. And real friendship is something which is authentic and real. And it encourages us to grow and change. Now, I want to do an illustration like this. I have a dove here. I hear you laughing, but if I move it around like this, does it look real? It's got a little hole at the bottom. And what I sometimes do for fun is, if I'm out and someone says, will you show us something? I pull out this little rubber thing and I sort of fiddle with it. And some people jump. But very quickly they realize it's not the real thing. They realize it's not a real dove. Now, as you know, the dove, quite often at weddings especially, is used as a sign of love. It's also used as a sign of purity. It goes back in history. It's in the words of scriptures. It talks about God, the symbol of God, being used as a dove. People would understand that. Today, we understand that. But if I told you I had a dove, and I pulled that out, and I tried to describe it to you as being something magical, you'd be a little bit disappointed. Because friendship has to be authentic and real. And that dove, I'm afraid, is not authentic and is certainly not real. But if I show you my little friend here, who is authentic and is real. It's very different when you meet the real thing. It's very different when you meet the real thing. They went on to talk about friendship as like this. There's this story about a judge, and he'd had a friend for many, many years, since they were 3-year-old. And he'd grown up with this guy. They did everything together. And when he was 18, they split away. They hadn't seen each other. And recently, this judge had been a victim of crime. His house had been burgled. And so he understood what it was like to be a victim of someone else's actions. Anyway, as it happened, on the very day he came into work, the guy that had broken into his house was standing before him. And as he saw him, his heart leapt. He realized that the man standing before him, who'd burgled his house, was his long-standing friend from his childhood. And he hadn't seen him since he was 18. As his eyes set upon him, he wanted to let him off. How could he punish his friend? But he knew when someone breaks the law and does something wrong, there has to be a cry for justice, doesn't there? Whenever someone does something to us, we always cry out, I want justice. So the law had to be satisfied. So he charged his friend £10,000 and a 3-year suspended sentence. And he saw his friend's shoulders drop because his friend knew he couldn't pay the fine. But then after he'd given him his sentence, he took his wig off and his jacket and went down and he paid the fine for his friend. They said to me that God's friendship is a bit like that. That I'd hurt God. I'd hurt him. And he sent Jesus to pay the price for me. Jesus was the one that was punished on my behalf because God had made these laws that said someone has to pay the price for when someone gets hurt. And Jesus did it. Jesus took it for me. I was astounded by that. You see, this was my view. My view was that if I was a good guy, say God existed, I'd be here, and if I did something good, I'd be closer to God. That makes a lot of sense for a lot of people, right? And then I thought, well, if I do bad things, I'll be further away. They said, no, it's not like that. You see, what happens is, as you get to know Jesus, he comes to live within you. And it's not about stepping back or stepping forward. The two become one. And you live together. He lives in your heart. And he changes you from the inside. And you're never the same. And when they said it like that, it made total sense. It absolutely opened my eyes to how God wants to have a relationship with me. What about you? I wonder if you understand the importance of this message and what I'm saying to you tonight. I wonder if you've ever thought of God wanting to be friends with you and what that means. My view was that sounded really exciting, but what about if I make mistakes? They said, well, it's a little bit like this. You know, say you make a mistake. In the old ways of my life, the way I've been brought up, I thought if I make a mistake, like if I rip something, I'll get punished if it's by accident. And this guy said, even if you do it on purpose, it's okay. It takes time to grow. It takes time to change. And God can fix it. God can put it right. God can restore what is broken. It's okay. And that's how I got it. That's how I understood it. That's how I realized that I could know God. I don't know if you've seen my 20. It's nice and fresh, but if I crush it, does it lose its value? No. The reason why is it's still a £20 note. What about if I call it names? There's many people I know have been called horrible names, and they've grown up carrying these names as a burden on their shoulders. Look, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless. You'll never be anything. Still £20. What about if I get it dirty? It's got a bit of dirt on my shoe from the outside. It's grubby now. You think the Bank of England's worried about that? No. You see, they're the ones that give it the value and the currency. They're the ones that say, doesn't matter how it is, we still value it. And then I realized, it doesn't matter how many scars you have or I have, or how many bruises you or I have in our life, or how many words people have said to us. We have never lost our value in the eyes of God. You have never lost your value in the eyes of God. And that was quite a big concept for me. I realize now that everyone in this room might have seen one of these when they were a child. Rubik's Cube, one of my favorite toys. I could never quite put it together, but I really, really enjoyed doing it. And, you know, our lives can become sometimes and very quickly in a mess. We might have grown up with messy families and messy lives. And what happens is the moment you come to Jesus, the moment you come to know him, I found out that he gives you a future that you could never dream of. So you get forgiveness. You get friendship. Then you realize you can have a future. And all the mess, he helps us deal with. He helps us find all the things that we never thought. And suddenly, after a while, when you look back, you realize there's more order. You think, wow, I couldn't have done that myself. And Jesus says, I know. I helped you do it. I did it for you. And it goes on and on. And as you go on this amazing journey, what happens is you become a light for others. You become a light for them. You become his friend and reach out to others on his behalf, offering them light, hope, joy, peace, all the things that are exciting in life. My future was changed when I found out and invited Jesus. I think of Jesus a bit like this. You know, sometimes when you visit someone's house and they give you a really nice bottle of wine, or sometimes you take a really nice bottle of wine. Have you ever done that? I like red wine, but I also like white wine. This is one of my little favorites here. I'll save that for somebody later on. When you have a beautiful bottle of wine, you savor it and you enjoy it. Did you know that last year they sold a bottle of wine for £160,000? I bet they enjoyed every mouthful of that. When you visit someone, or they visit you, there's sometimes an exchange, a gift is given. And here I have a bottle of wine in the bag. The gift of Jesus was costly. He had to pay for it, but he gives it freely. And when you take it, the aroma is amazing. The experience is like no other. If I compared it to wine, there's no bottle on earth like it. But he gives us free will. In the beginning, I said we can accept him or reject him if you want. You can crush it and turn your back on him. Say, I don't want it. It's not for me. It's not my time. But as I close, think of this. I have some silks here. I have a green silk. Just imagine that this green silk is your life. And we also have here a blue silk. Just imagine that this blue silk is your friends and family. And this yellow silk is your potential. Put that in there. And finally, this red silk is Jesus. He says, I want to come in to the whole tapestry. I want to make sense of everything. The past, the present, and the future. I want you to understand the bigger picture. So that when you look at it, it will be like a beautiful cloth, or a beautiful robe, or a beautiful picture. And you'll look back with joy, and it'll make total and utter sense. All one, not separate. Okay, just to conclude. I went on a course, on an alpha course. It doesn't matter what course you go on. But I suddenly, 15, 16 years ago, decided I wanted to find out the meaning of life. And I knocked on a door, and I put my money where my mouth is and did a course, not knowing what was to come, not knowing it would change my life. I found forgiveness. I found friendship. And I found a future. I hope I've challenged your perceptions. I hope I've got you to think about the reality of your life. I hope I've got you to think a little bit outside the box. Because when you start on a journey with Jesus, anything is possible. And you step into your potential. How do you do that? You say a little prayer. You could just say, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. I didn't know. Can you help? Can you come? Can you make yourself known? And let's journey together. And he's so faithful. Like a best friend, he'll always respond. Just to finish. You'll see here, my little friend is inside the cage. And as I said only before that, a dove is used to represent love. And if I jump at this bird, it'll fly away. Love is something that needs to be nurtured and cared for. You can accept love, or you can turn your back on it. So I want you to think of this cage, if you can, for a moment, as God's invitation to you. And the bird of love is in the cage. That's how I'd like you to see it. And God is saying to you, what would you like? Would you like this bird? Would you like my love? Or do you want it to go away? I'd like to encourage you tonight to take the bird, to take this gift. Don't scare it off. It's your choice. Thank you very much.